Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, we're going to deep dive the Low Chuan. This is the new regional unit in Imperial Age, replacing the Canon Galleon for the Three Kingdoms civilizations, plus Chinese insurgents. And the main question here is how good it really is, as in some ways it's very different from the Canon Galleon. To start with a comparison at a glance, beside the Canon Galleon and Dromon, first off, it's the most expensive of the three, and is actually more expensive than any other naval or siege unit in the game, with 4 times the resource investment of a Galleon. I do feel like the Low Chuan should probably be a little bigger, as the Therissidae is double the cost of a Galleon, and that really shows physically. But it's not immediately obvious the Low Chuan is then double the cost of a Therissidae. Those Three Kingdom civs really need to audit their shipbuilders, as it feels like a lot of wood and gold is getting skimmed off the top during the construction process. Now, while they don't require chemistry to unlock like the Galleon, they take a full minute to train, similar to a Dromon, so it's tricky to build up their numbers too much, and we'll have to keep in mind to feel viable they'll have to be effective in small numbers. Stats-wise, they're a bit more on the durable side and have decent HP and armor, with a fairly quick reload time compared to these other two at just 5 seconds, compared to 10 for Canon Galleons and 8 for Dromons, but have a pretty complicated way they attack depending on what they're up against. It's by far the most quirky aspect of the unit, and will sort of make or break their usefulness, given they're the most expensive non-hero unit in the game. So let's focus on their attack for a moment. Against buildings and some siege, including onagers and trebuchets, they automatically switch into a long-range catapult mode with 25 melee attack and 13 range, or up to 14 for Shu and Jurchens, who have siege engineers. Castles end with just 11 range after bracer, so Low Chuans have those covered, and helping out is an extra 230 bonus damage behind the scenes against buildings, as well as an extra 10 against siege units. On the other hand, when targeting most units, including siege unique units and enemy ships, they automatically switch into an arrow mode, still having very long range, but now firing 10 projectiles altogether, all of which start at 5 base pierce attack, with another 5 hidden anti-ship bonus damage snuck in. On paper, that's actually a lot of damage, as long as too much armor isn't getting involved, and this is all from up to 13 range, one more than a fully upgraded longbowman. The two ways of firing admittedly complicates their upgrades quite a bit, with each mode upgraded independently. For the anti-building catapult, you want to pick up siege engineers to boost their range from 13 to 14, and do more anti-building bonus damage. For the arrow mode, you'll want ballistics, fletching for more attack and range, as well as chemistry, as that +3 attack from blacksmith upgrades and +1 for chemistry mean a lot when you have just 5 base pierce attack. The dock also gives upgrades for pierce armor, speed, and a discount like usual as well. Worth pointing out is there's no elite upgrade or chemistry requirement, making them a little cheaper to tech into than elite Canon Galleon in particular, with that elite upgrade alone being over 1,000 resources extra right off the top. Where the Low Chuan really gets complicated though is with all the different civ bonuses and unique techs that come into play, as all 5 civilizations have their own spin on the unit. In blue, the Wei have a 25% discount, though no shipwright or dry dock for that matter. That means in early Imperial Age they're a bit easier to get out, but feel the most generic, as a benchmark dealing 32 damage per attack to this fully upgraded halberdier. In the red, the Wu have a unique tech for 2 extra projectiles in the catapult mode only, which each deal 10 melee and 40 bonus damage against buildings, far less than the main projectile, but we'll look at building damage in a moment. In arrow mode, like the Wei, they're also generic feeling against ships and land units. In green, we have the Shu, with unique tech giving them 3 extra arrows, and have a civ bonus for 15% more speed, plus dry dock and siege engineers. They're probably the best to micro with, and in this case average around a third more damage per attack thanks to the extra arrows. Yellow is then the Jurchens, who have their expensive unique tech Thunderclap bombs, letting Low Chuans explode when defeated, though that's actually not as useful on water as on land, as a lot of things will be out of range, like even fire ships for example. More importantly, they add in secondary explosions for both their catapult and arrow mode, greatly increasing their attack, in this case more than doubling it against a generic unit. They're the big one to watch, and if Jurchens can't make a matchup work in their favor, it probably won't work out for any of the other civs either. And finally in cyan, we have the Chinese, who deal 25% more damage with rocketry, which includes any bonus damage they have, plus the rockets themselves then gain a bit of blast damage. They end up being roughly on par with the Shu in firepower, while being slower and shorter range. So those are the basics, but particularly because of their middle ground firing rate, landing between the Galleon and Canon Galleon, plus all those different civilization variations, it's hard to have an intuitive sense for how it stacks up. So let's put them through a few tests and see how they do. It seems like their function first and foremost is bombarding the shoreline and taking out castles, as they are your cannon galleon replacement after all, so we'll start there. Off the bat, there's a lot of variability, with the Wei coming in as the weakest hitting at just under 3,000 damage per minute, and going up from there, next with the Shu, Wu, and then Chinese, all around the mid 3,000s damage per minute, and Jurchen's far and away the best, with over 4,000. Considering castles start with 4,800 HP by default, that's quite a bit, and if we divide that by their cost, ignoring shipwright but including the Wei's discount, we get around 7 to 9 damage per minute for each resource spent, with Wei actually end up being right in line with the others, and Jurchen still being the best value for what you spend, assuming you get their unique tech for the secondary explosions. For some intuition in how that stacks up against other anti-castle units, where low Chuans were doing 3,500 damage per minute, plus or minus 700, the others here range from low 1,000s to high 2,000s, with trebuchets doing the best, but still behind most of the low Chuan civilizations. Of course, that doesn't tell us how they're doing in terms of value, and if we again divide that damage per minute by their cost, where low Chuans landed in the 7 to 9 range, notice most of these units give more like 4 or 5 damage for every resource spent, and only the trebuchet is in a similar ballpark to the worst of the low Chuans. The Jurchen's 9 damage per minute for each resource spent is really good in the wider context, at least if we're leaving the top tier trebuchet civs out of the discussion. So far, it's an A+ for the unit, as both per resource spent and especially on a per unit basis, they're one of the most anti-building units in the game, while still outranging all castles except the Teutons. The point is, low Chuans are totally fine out of the gate if all they were used for was to target buildings, though at the same time, the arrow mode is suggestive that they might even have some utility against units and ships as well. The Therissidae, Longboat, and now Turtle Ship also have multiple arrows, and seem to benefit a lot from those. So now let's see if low Chuans are really the complete package, and can give some decent firepower in arrow mode as well. We'll start against Arbalesters missing the last armor upgrade as really a best case matchup against something with almost no armor to see what kind of raw firepower we're dealing with. I'm using 4 Galleons here as they're about a quarter the cost of a low Chuan, and it turns out the Galleons do end up being a little faster than at least generic low Chuans at working through the Arbalesters, but we're still ahead of cannon Galleons and even a Dromon benchmark, which is promising and speaks to the firepower of 10 arrows per shot. If we then start looking at civ variants, the Jurchens and Shu are way ahead of the others, so at least where there's little to no pierce armor, a few low Chuans start out really well. You might sense where I'm going with this though, and if we switch to something higher armor like Paladins, low Chuans quickly fall off a cliff, being actually the worst ones here. Again, Jurchens are clearly the best of the bunch, and just given the type of attack the low Chuan has, it's pretty sensitive to pierce armor, and not really versatile against land units. Admittedly, this is all kind of a minor consideration, and more important are naval matchups. There is something to be said here, and with balanced resources against even a fully upgraded elite cannon galleon, the low Chuan wins. We haven't focused on them too much, but even against Dromons, which are useful as a sort of watered down mangonel naval unit, even a generic low Chuan wins, and Jurchens would do even better here. Again, it's a promising start, but the real test is Galleons. Usually, a bunch of arrows are a great thing, and in this case, of the arrow-heavy unique naval units, the generic low Chuan would be the second hardest hitting, at about 600 damage per minute against a Galleon, only beaten here by the elite Turtle Ship. On one level, mass arrows is a great strategy, though keep in mind Galleons do about 300 damage per minute to each other, so a low Chuan is about 4 times the cost for only double the firepower. There is another issue though. Unlike Age of Empires 3, we don't actually get to see pieces flying off a ship as it's destroyed, which is too bad, as that was always one of my favorite parts of that game. To borrow that analogy though, some big chunks are flying off the low Chuan every time it's hit. Where a Galleon shot takes 4 to 11 resource-sized chunks off the other ship shown here, every hit on a low Chuan is invisibly blasting away 27 resources worth of the unit. If we saw chunks flying off proportional to the value being chipped away on every attack, we'd see 7 times as much flying off the low Chuan as the Therissidae in Turtle Ship, and it would be clear the low Chuan's cost makes this fight unsustainable. Balancing for resources with just a generic low Chuan, the Galleons end with 80% of their HP left, despite each low Chuan having the firepower of 2 Galleons. That's actually very similar to the result you see for Dromons with balanced resources in the same fight, and it's pretty clear neither is meant to be a counter to your standard Galleon mass. Jurchens do improve on this result as the best of the low Chuans, but the Galleons still win with about 2/3 of their strength left over. Even as a ranged support unit with some Galleons in front to distract, the low Chuan just doesn't have the firepower to be anything more than a minor contributor in a pinch, and even Jurchens should just stick primarily with their other options if they're trying to win water. But what about against fire ships, where maybe those multiple projectiles can really work some magic? In this case, unfortunately, they all do just 1 damage per shot, as the fast fire ship basically negates everything. In return, fast fire ships deal 1200 damage per minute and exploit the low Chuan's minimum range and slow speed, so this is if anything an even worse matchup. They end up doing about the same damage over time as a Galleon for about 4 times the price, albeit from 13 range instead of 10. That said, this is one case where unique techs can really come into play. While Wei, Wu, and Shu all deal low 100-ish damage per minute, Chinese roughly double that with their rocketry tech, as they can start to overpower fireship armor. Maybe the Galaxy Brain move is then to attack ground, as that engages their Catapult mode, dealing 25 melee damage, and nearly triples a generic low Chuan's arrow damage over time. Jurchens still come out the best again though with their explosions, at over 400 damage per minute. That's even more than Dromons or elite cannon galleons, and has the advantage of probably less overkill over time as well. The problem is Jurchens don't have fast fireship of their own or shipwright, so head-to-head against even generic units when fireships are involved is still a tough matchup, despite each low Chuan having quadruple a Galleon's firepower. Overall though, we can say the arrows themselves are not that impressive in naval combat. Usually we associate multiple arrows with decent naval ships, but this time they're just a bit too underpowered for their cost, which is fair enough, as the unit is already A+ against buildings. There's no need for low Chuans to be good against everything, but it was worth checking, and at moments they did have some promise. So that's the lowdown on the low Chuan. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.